Hello and welcome to another episode of the Embodied Union podcast. I'm Lindsay.
I'm Charlie.
And today, what are we talking about?
Well, first, I just want to name, because normally we do our podcast on a Friday, it is Sunday.
Ooh, I'm sure everyone's been
very busy.
Oh yeah, what has it been? What happened on Friday?
My birthday.
Yeah.
And just wanting to acknowledge what an epic weekend we've had. You have, from the morning of Friday, I feel like it's still continuing now on the Sunday. It's just been really amazing, and yeah, just appreciate you. And I just wish that other women and humans could have the experience of just receiving in this way.
Yeah, well, you're really beautiful at receiving. I've even had some people reach out to go, I want someone to love me like you love Charlotte. And I think it's so cute. So cute.
It's an interesting thing though, like, you say I'm good at receiving. I find receiving so easy. And I know for yourself, like, receiving wasn't always easy for you.
No.
I just can't resonate with that.
Well, you don't have a nourishment barrier, right? So, this is something that I work a lot with men with, like receiving barrier, nourishment barrier, rest barrier.
Yeah.
Like, maybe a rest barrier is probably more the thing, and that's why we always make sure we do warm things and slow things and comfy things. And, like, you've just been amazing, and it's been so beautiful to celebrate your birthday month.
That's right. It's been a birthday month. I hope everyone gets a birthday month as well. And that is not the topic of our podcast, but it has been a really good
Segue.
month. And what we are going to talk about today, though, do not make your partner your parent is like the crux of it. And like what that means, what I make that mean is your partner is not responsible for your big emotions. They're not responsible for your emotions. They're not responsible for your healing work. They're not responsible for your triggers or your dysregulated states. And often in relationship, we try really hard, the ego tries really hard to make our partner responsible for them. And it's a really big block to intimacy.
It absolutely is. And I mean, like, there's this, it feels like there's this part that's like, I'm in relationship with myself, but it's so easy to take my partner personally because they're the ones that are doing things that annoy me or upset me. And, I think for so many of even the listeners, it's so easy to get distracted by what our partner is doing, and therefore we take it to heart. Like, it's like they're doing it. And I mean, they might do something that upsets us, but they can't make us be upset. That's our choice. And I think that's what we're really going to dive in tonight or today to do.
And I think it needs to start at that awareness piece, because maybe because we're in this work, I just assume that people know what I'm talking about all the time, but it's like, actually, at a really mainstream level, the way most people feel in relationship is, well, it is my partner's fault. They did this thing and they didn't do this thing, or they said this thing, and that made me upset. That made me jealous. That made me frustrated. That made me mad. And this is the first place where humans fall down, because no one actually can open up the top of your head and pour in jealous or mad or irritated or frustrated. All they can actually do through the use of their language and behavior is expose a tenderness, which is a wound inside of me. That's why one person can have road rage and one person doesn't. That's why one person...
Are you calling me out?
You are sassy on the roads. But like my example, being more anxious in relationship, just say I don't hear back from my partner, I can fall into anxiety, where for someone who feels really secure and solid, it's like, my partner's just busy. They don't make it mean something. So yes, our partner's behavior and language triggers us, but it only triggers our unhealed, unreconciled, hurt and scared, the wounds that we've actually been carrying since childhood.
Yeah, and I think that's so the truth. It's like, if any of the listeners were listening to this right now, it's like, the upset that you have with your current partner right now, you've had well before they came along. And if you haven't had it with them, it was lying dormant until this person came along to expose this upset or this hurt or this whatever it might be in your relationship that's actually designed to have you heal it. And and no one else can do it. This is the thing, like we so want our partner to change, and you know, I'm going to make a boundary that you don't do that anymore, but that's not a boundary. That's controlling. That's trying to like change our external rather than change the internal. And I think it's really important that people are like, oh, thank you. Like, you're really pissing me off right now or upsetting me. And that's something that I need to manage, not for you to fix it for me. So that would take a whole lot of self-responsibility, I think.
Which takes self-awareness. It's having the awareness that, yes, I'm triggered right now. Yes, maybe I don't appreciate the language or the behavior, but like, I'm so triggered. Like, what is it about me? Like, what meaning am I making? So thank you for showing me what I couldn't see before, which is pretty much impossible to do when you're in the heat of a trigger and you're triggered at your partner. It's just like, you're really going to thank them for the gift of the trigger. But it's not about conflict. Like, relationship conflict is normal, but it's how quickly you can come back to, all right, what's actually happening inside of me? What am I making this mean? Like, what wound is this triggering in me? So much so that I'm in this state.
Yeah.
And often when we don't have this level of awareness, often we'll fall into trigger, and then it's, you need to make this better. You need to fix me, save me, soothe me. And co-regulation is a gift in relationship. Our partner can soothe us, but it can't be at the expense of knowing how to self-regulate, how to have self-responsibility, and how to look at our stuff.
Yeah, because I mean, we were speaking to the men about this last week about neuroception, and it's a part of that. It's like, that's one part of like the polyvagal theory. It's like, okay, if my nervous system is dysregulated and my neuroception is off, it's like, you're attacking me, you're yelling at me, you're doing this. It's like, no, you're actually just speaking to me and I'm making it mean something different to what it actually is. So I can also be overly sensitive, and that creates more further dysregulation for me, which can be like a negative feedback loop of like, it's getting worse and you're the culprit, you know, and that's when it shifts the blame. So I think we should probably talk about like the projection on the parent in relationship. So it's like, often in this case, it's like men will project either their mother wound or the dynamic that they've had in their relationships from the past with their relationship with their mums growing up. So it's like an opposite for women.
Well, women, I don't necessarily think it's mother specific. I think we project our childhood wounds.
True.
And it could be parent related, but it also, like, primary caregiver can be a number of factors. It's the environment we grew up in. It's maybe the grandparents or the primary caregivers. Maybe it was a sibling that we had big issue with, or a teacher. But it's like the unreconciled childhood stuff that we project onto our partner as though they are responsible for it.
Because when you were saying earlier that it's just like we project, you know, the parent, like, you know, don't make your partner your parent.
Yeah.
It's like, so it's just, what you're saying is it could be any caregiver, or it could
It's typically, it's the primary caregiver, and typically that is mum and dad, but the primary caregiver can be, it's a number of factors. But I like that expression, don't make your partner your parent. One, because like how closely related those words are, like they're basically spelt the same. You know, like there's no coincidence that partner and parent are spelt the same. But it doesn't necessarily have to have been the parent. It's just the childhood wounding that we all carry. Even if we didn't have like significant big trauma, we all have these little relational wounds that we're carrying, and they play out in the stage of the intimate relationship as an adult.
Yeah. Well, I guess, you know, from my point of view, it's like I was really close with my mum, but I always say, I found it really difficult that, you know, like trying to create love and being a good boy is so prevalent, or has been, in my relationship, of like trying to be like a good partner and put lots of effort in, and, you know, if I do that, then you should love me, you know, and it's a slippery slope of, you know, I need to love me. Like, I'm actually in relationship with me. It's like, do I need to give? So, you know, give to the point of detriment has probably been my biggest learning piece, is like, we were speaking about this the other day. It's just like, where's the balance for somebody who's a giver to not overgive? Because then that can really make the person create resentment or create upset and create like a fairness piece. Because I know that's been my wounding in the past, is like I make it that it's almost unattainable. It's like I put so much effort in that the other person can't match it, you know, and then I breed my own resentment and create my own turmoil in relationship. It's like, you're not even a part of it. I'm just creating all of it on my own, and you're on the receiving end, getting the love bombed and then potentially like being upset or projected at when it's not reciprocated.
This is what we do to each other. Like on the flip, for me, having an absent father figure, I know that I have always been looking for the unconditional love of a man, my partner. And so that little girl in me who never had unconditional love of a father will create scenes and tantrums, and she'll get really mad and she'll get stuck in her mad, and I would refuse to repair, because it's like, you're gonna pay, you're gonna make this better, and you should just love me. If I'm in this tantrum, then if you really love me, you'll prove it. And like, this is grandstand behavior. We talk about grandstand behavior all the time, and it's where you're trying to get the other person to prove that they love you. And I'm doing that to fill a void. Like, there's a deficit that I have. So I'm going to create this thing, and you're going to prove that you love me. But all that is doing is perpetuating the belief that I'm not lovable. Because no one can ever fill that void. It's a lose-lose game, grandstand behavior.
Yeah.
And I think that resonates for the more anxious style of attachment, where if someone does feel more anxious, it's like, I'm not enough in some way, I'm not lovable, I'm going to be left, fear of abandonment. And it's like that I am not safe, or I am not going to be okay belief. So I'm trying desperately to make my external, my partner, prove to me that I am safe. And that can go on and on and on for
What a fun
forever.
loop.
It's a loop. And so that's the thing, like, we're still quite human. You know, you have that wound playing out with me, I play out mine with you, but every time there's a lot more consciousness and awareness in our relationship, so when it does come up, we can call it out quite quickly. That's why I always, with this work, it's not just working on the relationship, it's having awareness around what is your own stuff, so you can actually call yourself out.
Yeah.
Because self-responsibility, again, it comes back to self-responsibility being the biggest part, I think, of a healthy relationship.
Yeah, like definitely spending some time in your own inquiry, in your own space, in your own inquiry of like, how am I showing up? What am I doing here?
What's the blueprint?
Yeah.
Like, what's my relational blueprint? We all have one. What is mine? What do I mean? What does love mean to me? What does attachment mean to me? What is relationship safe? Like, there's so much inquiry here. And it's such an important line of inquiry.
And I think too, like, you know, thinking about it recently around like the shadow of relationship is like, if we have the abandonment wound, it's almost like we create it.
We perpetuate our wounds, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think it's that as well. When we make our partner, you know, like some caretaker for us, we also push our wound onto them to fix or fulfill or whatever it is, and it almost perpetuates it. Like, I think about myself as far as like, love's hard or love's got to be tough. So it's like, in the past, I have done a lot of fighting and a lot of arguing and whatnot, because I needed to perpetuate my unconscious belief that I wasn't even fully aware of, that I've got to fight, I've got to argue, love's got to be hard. Like, it can't just be easy or easeful. And it's a nightmare. It was a nightmare, you know? It's just, and I don't, like, I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't perpetuate stuff like that anymore in my relationship. And I still have slip-ups, but I don't feel like I'm creating problems in my relationship anymore. And I think that goes for all of us once we've done enough inquiry or enough personal responsibility work that we're just like, I don't want to keep doing this. And I think for the listeners, it's like, you know, if you're in the conflict phase of your relationship, it's like, it's not actually the other person. It's actually I have a lot of stuff that I could clear up myself. So I could stay in this relationship that I'm currently in and be doing this work because my partner right now is exposing parts of me that need healing.
I just want to add here, because this is a little sneaky bit, it's self-responsibility 100%. And this is not a reason to tolerate shitty behavior, abusive behavior. Like
yes.
I work with a lot of women where it's like they suddenly start taking so much responsibility, and it feeds that part that wants to stay in the toxic relationship.
Yes.
It's like you still have to, like you get to have your boundaries and values, actually, more important. Like know what you value in relationship, be a stand for that, and take responsibility, but also exit out if a partner or relationship is not in alignment with your values.
Yeah, and I get that that's especially hard for someone with an anxious attachment. Like for me, it took me 5 years to really like step out, because every time I stepped out, I felt like I got pulled back in, and it can be really difficult in relationship to do that. But I think you're right. I think it's, if you have solid agreements and solid boundaries and solid values, and you are like rock solid with those, I think the fear often when people are wanting to exit and don't know how is there's probably a fear of like, and I know this is the ego, it can't be better. Or what happens if I don't ever meet someone
Well, it's
again?
lack mentality, it's scarcity, it's no one will love me this much. What if no one will love me again? Or I'd rather be in connection and suffering than be alone. So whenever I'm working with a woman in relationship, it's like, if your reason to stay is fear-based, that is not reason to stay.
Yeah.
And we still like,
that
again,
one's hard.
we have our values, again, we have the standard of relationship we're here for, but we also are flexible with our human. Like we give our partner grace to be a human and to not be perfect, you know, especially when you're in a long-term committed relationship and you're having kids and all these things. It's like, we're going to slip up, we're going to fall down at times, but overall the relationship gets to be in alignment with your values. And that gets to be a non-negotiable.
I think that's like amazing advice for people, is like, because what I see in that is often it's people are sitting there going, I know this isn't right for me, and why am I staying? Something is playing out. And sometimes it's even that part that I was speaking to before around like, there's a part of them that enjoys suffering. It's like you get to play the victim.
We're addicted to, when you haven't done this work, like there's an addiction to the wounding. We're addicted to the evidence of I'm not enough. Like, and the conscious mind can't really grasp that. It's like, I absolutely don't want to be treated this way. But if it's a pattern, if it's a theme that you are looping on, there's having as evidence of wanting. There is a part of you that absolutely wants your partner to be showing up exactly the way that they are, because you are gathering evidence for something, some dysfunctional belief.
The existential kink.
This very much so. So we need to shine the awareness on like, what's the program that's operating?
Yeah, I love this drama. I love being treated this way. It's like, evidence totally. If I am staying and this relationship is not good, there's some part of me that loves it how it is.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
A lot of people are addicted to being the victim. Even though it's uncomfortable, it might be familiar. You know, we stay in...
And righteous.
And righteous, the
about
martyr.
it. Yeah, like I am a victim. They have abused me, or they have lied to me, or they did cheat and I did go back and now I have the upper hand. But the upper hand for what? Like, really?
There's
Yikes.
also, we're talking about this recently, this idea of intermittent reinforcement. This is another reason why people stay in relationship that's toxic, because they're getting intermittently reinforced, like a bit of love. It's like scraps of intimacy being thrown inside of a relationship that's otherwise pretty inconsistent and unstable.
This is too close for me.
If someone is let's say with you, for example, you're in a relationship 20 years, and just as you're like, I'm out of here, they'll lean in all the way. And it's like, oh, that's addictive. You know,
Yeah.
when something is just consistent, we have a more healthy relationship. But if someone is like leaning in, leaning out, leaning in, leaning out, and there's inconsistency and you don't know when it's going to come and when it's going to go, we get addicted to that dynamic.
So true.
Intermittently reinforced love. So it's love inside of an abusive relationship.
Yeah. And I think too, it's just knowing that abuse can be emotional, it can be physical, it can be with words, it can be with too much space, it can be like your partner knows your wounds, and if they want to, they can really hurt. They can really hurt you. Like if you know your partner is like really has an abandonment wound and you leave, you have an argument and then you leave and you don't text them, like that's really hurting them. That's like, you know purposely what you're doing, whether it's conscious or unconscious. It's like there's a part of you that really knows their deepest wounding and it's easy to push. So I think it's like really making sure that we're not hurting our significant other in ways that is like damaging, you know, because I think sometimes when you are hurt or you are upset in relationship or conflict does happen, which it's going to, it's like, how do we not create further damage? You know, like get it. We can both sometimes be dysregulated with each other, but we never name call. We never do things that create long-term damage.
And that's part of our values. Like in relationship, it's an absolute boundary for me if you were to call me names or to swear at me or to be yelling at me or to withdraw love or like to punish me in that kind of way. Like that would just be a no. That would just be a no.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that we don't perpetuate the old patterns. Like if we come back to this, how our caretakers were, or realizing that, oh, am I modeling the relationship that my parents had? Is that my default setting? Is like, oh, they used to yell at each other and I don't mean to, but I yell in my relationship now. It's like, oh, maybe I should have a look at my positive and negative qualities of my parents or caretakers and kind of see which parts of me might be exposing or might need some work here.
Well, a really interesting exercise, if you guys are also up for an exercise, would be to write down some of the negative qualities of mum, some of the negative qualities of dad, some of the positive qualities of mum, positive qualities of dad, and then see which one of those qualities is your partner and see which ones of those qualities is you. It's likely that you are all of them, like, or if not close to, and your partner is likely some of them, especially when you haven't done a level of self-development. And I want to share that little story from our relationship because it really ties in with the don't make your partner your parent. In the beginning of our relationship, I feel like I really tried to make you my dad in all of the ways, not just the fun ways. And how that would look is being very sensitive, getting triggered, getting upset, getting angry, and then you try and lean into repair with me, and I refuse. I desperately want repair, but I refuse to actually receive it because I'm still stuck in the mad. And that's something that I've played out in every single relationship, trying so desperately to get my partner to like continue leaning in, unconditionally love me, even though I'm going to stay stuck in my shit. And very early on in our relationship, you said to me, you say it in your voice.
Charlotte, I can't save you.
Did you guys hear that? That in the moment, my little girl
she was so heartbroken.
was devastated, but there's another part of me, like that wise woman that really wants an intimate, beautiful relationship, that really got it. Like really got that I was finally in a relationship with a mature man who wasn't gonna coddle me while I'm like Lindsay.
You sweetheart, we were in the kitchen. I was on the other side of the island bench and I told you that. And I think you might have disappeared and gone into the bathroom. And
I went into my room and I threw myself on my bed. I was just like, I wanted to like it just brought up so much. But what it did is it let me know I'm in a relationship where I can't play that out anymore.
Yeah. And
I recognized that if I wanted to be in the kind of relationship that I said I valued, which is a conscious relationship, then I had to, that behavior wasn't welcome here. And that was one of my biggest growth pieces.
It
Because
really
in that
was.
moment, as much as that hurt me, after that, it's like, all right, what am I here for? Am I the embodiment of what I say I want? Can I, and like,
That was in like November of
it was
like,
very early in our relationship.
it really
and
was.
like, that
It was ballsy of me. I was like, oh God, but it felt like it
But
had
it was
to be
you
said.
drawing a boundary.
It was.
And it's at the end of the day, what I want is a masculine man.
Hmm.
And if I say I want a masculine man, then it means that it's a man that will say no to me and will have his boundaries and won't put up with my shit. And you're so loving.
Yeah, and I think the thing to remember with that is, for men, vulnerability is actually honesty. You know, it doesn't have to be emotional vulnerability, but actually what is truly vulnerable for a man with a woman in relationship is, as a man, to be honest. And that sometimes is like terrifying, to be truly honest. But I believe that my feminine partner will see through anything that isn't honest. So when I'm honest, there's nothing to fight with it. There's no way to like wiggle around or get around it. And that's what I sort of realized in early on in our relationship. It's like, I have to be honest with this woman, you know, from day one.
And
as much as possible.
sometimes I don't want to hear your honesty, but a deeper part of me always does. The little girl in me doesn't. And so it's such a good example of like me realizing I don't get to make you my parent, because if I do, you're going to leave. And like, so what do I choose?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, there's lots of layers to this, because it's like the abandonment. If you have a wound or an abandonment, it's like, and you can't play that out anymore. It's like, oh, now what? You know, there's really not that playing out. You can't, you know. And for me, it was, I just didn't want to do the same thing again. So I'd already been in a relationship with my mum growing up, and then I married someone that's very similar to my mum in ways, and I overstepped my boundaries for a very long time in my relationship. And I feel like I just don't want to do that. You know, for me, it was like I've been really upfront about so many things. And I just know for myself is that I think the big one for me is like just being straight up as much as I possibly can, and learning how to self-reveal has probably been one of the biggest pieces for me, where it's like, you're not having to race around and pick up after me, so to speak, emotionally. It's that I come to you, not you chase me. That's been the big one.
And so I guess it's like the beauty of this, by you being committed to that, and me also being committed to being responsible for my stuff, it's actually allowed our intimacy to really flourish. Like, a couple will say that they value intimacy and they want more intimacy, but they've got all these shadowy things playing out that actually is the thing that is stopping the intimacy from happening.
Yeah.
Because intimacy is between adults. Like, sexual intimacy needs two mature adults. And if we're just projecting our parent wounds onto each other, there's no space for polarity. There isn't. So it's like, you have to take responsibility for your part, for your stuff. Like, I have to do me, I gotta look after me, and you have to look after you. And that actually supports the third energy, which is the relationship itself.
Absolutely.
That entity gets to thrive.
And I think so often it's like couples are, our intimacy is not working. And it's also like, well, we've said it in the previous podcast, where it's like, they're just so stressed out, they're not actually doing them. They're barely doing themselves, let alone the relationship. And because they're not looking at their own stuff or wanting to deal with it, they're just hoping that the other person makes their relationship better. And I think that's a recipe for disaster. Like, don't wait for your partner to make the relationship better. That's a you thing.
And it's also just another way to stay in like the victim identity, and how disempowering, because you have no control over the other. Like, if you say you value relationship, even if you're still in this part where it's like, yeah, but my partner is showing it is them. It's like, how's about you turn that around, the focus onto yourself, and if you were to take 150% responsibility, how did you create the dynamic that you are currently in right now?
Yep.
And it's a dynamic. There's both people are inputting But it's like, look at how you are contributing. Like, don't even focus on, get your partner, hopefully.
Such a distraction.
Like, yeah, it really is. It's like, just focus on how you are showing up and then what you are willing to do to have a different experience. And if your partner can do that as well, and you can meet each other in this both self-responsible place, then the relationship stands a chance. But if you're both just stuck in blame, attack, projection, it's you made me feel like this, you did this to me, it's like you're going nowhere fast, going nowhere good fast.
Yeah, and I think when couples, and I'll speak to that, is I think at times couples, one of the persons in the relationship might have this awareness and then start to do it, but because it isn't communicated in a way that lands with the other, it kind of almost falls flat. They might try it for a while and then get met with, you know, resistance, or about time you fix that, or you're better, or why have you changed, that sort of communication, and it doesn't work. So I think, you know, really about setting up this agreement and setting up communication, like effective communication in relationship, such that change is actually possible. Because it's like, when I've changed and I do my internal work, there's actually an element of I have to be able to communicate that to you such that you understand it. You know, because I could have an epiphany, I could feel really different, but you still see me the same way. It's almost like it doesn't change either. So it's like...
Because my relationship is based on my perception of you.
That's right.
Not necessarily whatever, it's all how I feel in my relationship is purely based on my perception of my partner.
Yeah, not even actually how they are.
Yeah, and I think with what you're saying there, I honestly don't know if a relationship can last if one person suddenly gets very inspired to do the work and then the other person absolutely refuses.
I don't think so.
I think that just is a lot of suffering. Like, an unconscious relationship where both people aren't doing the work is a shit show. A relationship where one is doing the work and one isn't, that's eventually going to fall apart. There'll be a move away eventually. So it really takes the two. It takes both being willing to lean in, have a look, learn this language, and show up differently. It really takes both.
Yeah, and speaking of that, what actually is actually a trigger for me is when someone goes, "Oh, I'm further along than they are," and that they're not coming along for the ride. It's like people get to be on different paths as well around this. Like, as long as both parties are doing the work, I think it's just really important that there's acknowledgement, that we're like validating the other person's like trying to do the work and doing it. But then I think the flip side of that is people can so easily fall in love with someone's potential. And I think that's what has some people stay in relationship way longer, is the potential of it. And I think if someone's showing you that they're not willing to do that work, like you said, then that's up to you then of whether you want to stay, and you know, is that the kind of standard of relationship? I spoke to someone today about that. They're like, this guy's does the work and he's in men's work, but he's not a man of his word. I had to, you know, I separated, and it was just like, okay, well, that's, you know, like, that is your opinion of him, but it's also like, and if that's what you believe, then that's good. Like, you know, staying true to that. I think it's really, really important that people do that.
Yeah, I think we get to raise the bar on like what's possible in relationship, and it starts with the relationship with self, and then you get to choose your values, choose your partner wisely. It's the most important decision that you can make.
Absolutely. And like, yeah, if you're single right now and wanting to be in relationship, it's like,
get clear on your values. What do you want? Like, have that line of inquiry for yourself.
Yeah, because then we catch the thing and we get into a relationship and it's like, oh God, you know, like, now what? You know, you catch the thing.
Catch what thing?
You catch the relationship that you think you want, and then when you've got it, it's like, oh, I almost hadn't expected what it would be like to actually be in this relationship. And then now it's like, now that I have it, now I've got to actually work on keeping it or growing or further developing. And I think that's this continual growth journey that we're all on, and hopefully the listeners are too.
I think if anyone's listening to our podcast, they're interested in relationship growth, And that feels quite complete for me. How do you feel?
Yeah, feels really good. Really good.
If anyone has questions, you know where to find us. You can find us through the podcast. Lindsay B on Instagram.
Lindsay B.
And
Charlie S. Hannah.
Charlie S. Hannah on Instagram. Do you have anything coming up?
Or I am Charlie Hannah. No, it's a different
I am Charlie S. Hannah. That's right. I am Charlie S. Hannah.
Embodied Union. And anything coming up?
Oh, let's leave that for next week, actually. But do you have anything for the men?
No, not at the moment. Just, yeah. The next couple of weeks coming up, there is a big men's event in southeast Queensland called A Gathering of Men, or The Gathering of Men, and I'll be a lead presenter on that program or that weekend. So if you're thinking about doing something in person and you're a
Men's
man,
work.
yeah, and you want to get deep dive into it, it's the one to come to.
What is the dates for that?
The 4th to the 7th of October.
And contacting you is the best.
Contact me, Lindsay B.
Send your men.
All right.
All right, my love. Thank you.
Love you, critter.